which was stage 5.
Yeah.
You need dialysis, surgeries, medication.
Mm.
I've had countless number of blood transfusion, iron transfusions, all these different things.
Yeah.
There can be cases as kidney disease can come through another disease called lupus. It can also come through what people don't realize, especially in the South Asian community,
Yeah.
is high blood pressure and diabetes is the highest cause of kidney disease.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you've got, let's say, type 2 diabetes and it's not under control,
Yeah.
you're not looking at diabetes getting worse, you're looking at kidney disease as the next step.
Right. I didn't know that.
And so it's a thing that can be impacted by anything. So even, for example, kidney stones.
Yeah.
You get kidney stones. Alhamdulillah, best case scenario, you pass them and it's done.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, you get scarring on the kidneys. Scarring on an organ means you've got a part of the organ which has failed but cannot recover again.
Yeah.
And obviously, it depends on the treatment you've had, how strained the kidney was. That depends on the level of scarring there is, but each person is different. But in my case, stage 5, they look at, you're going to be put on the transplant list, but before that, it's dialysis, it's different treatments. There's even though you're on stage 5, there's still some work they do before they put you on the list.
Right.
And it's different in everyone. They might put someone on the list at the start of stage 5 because it might progress quite quickly.
Right.
If you're at the start of stage 5, they might say, we're going to do maybe 6 months to a year of dialysis, and if you build up your strength, then in that 6 months to a year, we'll put you on the transplant list because you'll now be eligible. There's also different things they look at. The criteria for having you on, is it worth putting you under that type of surgery if the kidney's not going to work once they put it in? There's all these different things they have to manage, and it's, for some it can be quite an easy journey, for others it's very, very difficult.
So how do you know so much about all of this? Is it
I've lived it for 30 years. In my case, when I was living it and when my parents were living it, because they did a lot of the work that I couldn't do until I became until I managed my own treatment on my own. We didn't have a lot of information back then. I'm sure you can imagine. It was basically what the nurses told us, what you might have found in a book. Until there was more understanding of it, until the internet started building, until more people came out and started advocating for it, there wasn't much you could do apart from take the advice of the nurses, which wasn't wrong at the time. But you could get second opinions from doctors and everything, but there wasn't really that, unless you were in a hospital with other parents or patients. There wasn't much of that sort of community where you can speak to other people with the same things as you. So I knew a lot just because I got sick of hospitals quite early. I enjoyed the side of hospital when I was young. In Great Ormond Street, I had the Nintendo 64 at my bedside. I had the PlayStation. I had all these things, but also at the same time, I was learning the types of anti-rejection medication. I was making my own pills. I was, my mum and dad was setting up my dialysis machine. I used to look at that. Needles became normal for me, so I learned how to needle myself if I needed to. I've had 3 PICC lines put in. So a PICC line is like a cannula, but it's more permanent. And so if anybody doesn't know what a cannula is, it's when you go into hospital and they put a needle into your arm and they keep it there. That's a cannula. PICC line is an advanced version of that, is where the cannula has to be changed every 3 days to a week, just to stop infection or stop it getting blocked. PICC line stays in depending on what it is. You can have a midline which stays in for a couple of weeks, a PICC line which can stay in for a couple of months. And it's the same process. I could self-administer IV antibiotics at home through that. And just by joining online communities and forums, you learn so much. As I'm part of an online group called Young Adult Kidney Group, which is set up by Kidney Care UK, which is there's loads of kidney charities in the UK. So the Kidney Care UK, there's National Kidney Patient Association, and part of there's groups within these charities. For example, Kidney Care UK, they've got a young adult part of the charity, which is 16 to 30. And that is just accessing as much information as possible for a young adult. So it can be for young adult ladies, it can be pregnancy. For young adult males, it can be whether or not they're able to conceive or have children. There's stuff on treatments. So, for example, a lot of the things that get put in the group are, uh, what kind of medication are you taking? Can I take this? A lot of kidney patients can't take ibuprofen,
Okay.
sort of stronger painkillers than paracetamol unless it's been prescribed.
Right.
But Nurofen, ibuprofen, anything that ends in fen, majority of the time you'll never be able to take it as someone with kidney disease.
Right.
So you get people putting questions in the group, asking stuff like that. You've got which is something I'm going to in July, September, 2 months, is a young adult weekend away.
Okay.
And it's a weekend in Derbyshire.
Okay.
It's like an on-site activity centre type thing, and it's just for young adults with kidney disease to go somewhere where they can. It can either be a weekend where you don't think about kidney disease, or it's a weekend where you get to meet other people who are going through the same journey as you. Whereas before you might have thought that your journey was an isolated one.
Sure.
So there's all these things that you can do. There's all sorts of support available. I've gone and put myself in all these little groups just so I can read, find out. And then I've also, when I was young, this is what I used to do past time is, which is why when I speak to doctors and nurses, they say that I sound like they're speaking to another doctor or nurse. It's because when I had nothing to do, I would just pull because back in the days they had the chart at the end of your bed in the folder. So I used to pull that out and read it. So you'd had like TX for kidney transplant and all these other codes. I used to Google what the code meant. So when the doctors, they tell you in simple terms when they're at your bedside, but then they go off and whilst they're writing your notes before they go to the next patient during their ward round, they still talk amongst themselves on what sort of test to order, what sort of path they're going to go down for your treatment. And I used to just listen in when they were talking about me and pick out what all these little codes meant and the difference between an ultrasound, the difference between a CT scan, a CT scan with contrast, all these sort of things. And even people with kidney disease, it can sound so complicated. But because I've been listening to it and in it from day one, I've just learned so much just by listening, watching, reading, doing. It becomes second nature to you if you're born with it, which is, I posed a question, I think it was last year on my social media, and I pose it with parents and patients I still meet, is do they feel it's easier to manage kidney disease if they're born with it rather than if they're diagnosed later in life? And a lot of people, parents especially, they find it hard to understand, which is very understandable, that later on in life it might be difficult now, but my child might start to find it easier. They're like, how do they find it easier? And it's not the treatment they find easier or living life with kidney disease they find easier. It's the ability to just get on with it. And it, more often than not, it's easier to manage and have the mindset of just get on with it when you're born with it, rather than if you were to get it in your teens or 20s and 30s. And I'm not saying people who get it later totally can't manage it. There's loads of people that I know as well who still just get on with it. But it's a lot harder because it just flips your life upside down. You're going from, even this was me before my transfer. I used to go to uni. Uni was in Bedford, so I'd get the train from Luton to Bedford, walk from station to the campus back, train, walk from train station home. College days, I used to go out leave home around 8 with my mates, college, gym, eat, chill, be back home by 6, 7, 8. And that went from just being out, busy all the time, charity work, volunteering, working, mates, to then going home and hospital, which is what it's become now. And it is difficult, but it's finding ways, which is also why I help people, because it keeps me busy and it allows me to see the blessings that I have in my life when I see the stories of other people. So even though I'm at home most of the time, and if I'm not at home, I'm at the hospital, I'm still able to see the blessings I have. I might not be able to walk the whole of Luton town anymore, but I can still be grateful that, even with the arthritis, I'm still able to make wudu. I'm still able to pray. I'm still able to, I don't have a feeding tube. I've got a supportive family. I've got the ability to be social. Like, I can mix in any sort of setting group. So, even if I go and do an activity with kidney patients from a way different background than me, I can connect with them. I can get them to settle in. I can allow them to feel more comfortable about their own experiences. I can pull away from that and still be a Luton boy with my mates. Or I can just go into a business setting and be smart. And so I've got the ability to do all these different things, which other people don't. And even things like that, which seem mundane to some people, is a blessing, because I could, if my life went in another way, took another trajectory, my situation could be flipped upside down, and I could be in the worst possible mental state. I could be blocking myself out from anyone. You might have messaged me and I thought, no, I don't want to do the radio show. So it's all these different things, whereas I'm grateful for I'm still able to do a lot of things. And I feel with that ability, I can still help other people who really do find it difficult. There's a lot of people who have very hard or very tough circumstances, and their mental health is affected. There's people who, even at their age now, don't understand, even after reading and researching and speaking to doctors, still don't understand their own kidney disease. And it forces them to want to shut out everything, including treatment. So it's kind of finding ways for me to find these people and helping them. So I've always known that there's a community, or a much larger community of people with kidney disease, but I'd never been in those communities up until COVID. And it might have been on my part that I was still out and doing things that I wanted to do. And also in part, it might have been I've never needed those services. But being able to now be in those services and access those services and be a part of the young adult team with kidney care, or speaking to other young adults, or even speaking to parents, speaking to other dietitians who and nurses who want patient experience. All these other things have now allowed me to, so I've set a goal for myself, which is wherever I am or whatever I do with my kidney disease, I want to make sure I help as many people as possible with their kidney disease, but also let them know that there is a community that they're a part of. So, for example, I used to teach before COVID. So I was a computer science teacher. You go into a classroom, even in staff room, a lot of people don't have a clue about kidney disease. University, the people are around, no one had a clue. It was only one person, and that was because their grandfather ended up with kidney disease and on dialysis. And then they came to me and said, this is the situation, what can we expect as a family? And I was like, yeah. So even up until then, they didn't understand it, which is, it's not anybody's fault, because unless you're exposed to certain things, you'll never know. So what I want to do as a, it's called a peer supporter. So with the hospital, with kidney care, is reach out to as many people with kidney disease who may have thought they don't have a community. Just reach out to them, and even if I'm not helping them, put them in a community that can. And it's, I get told a lot. I've never met, no, that's a lie. I've met one person in Luton with kidney disease, just one. But whenever I go to the hospital, whenever I speak to nurses, whenever I speak to doctors, and I mentioned I'm from Luton, they'll always say there's loads of patients from Luton, and I've only ever met one. So it's, they might be hidden away and doing their own thing, which even I was a couple of years ago. Or they might not even know those services exist, and not just young people, adults as well, or even parents. And it's you know, what I appreciate now is there's a lot of people, patients, who are coming out, young adults, making these social media pages and sharing their journeys. And it's not just a select group, it's everyone from diverse backgrounds and diverse types of kidney disease. So we've got Ravinda, who's an Indian lady who's a dietitian. She does a lot of work on putting information out about diabetes and kidney disease, also with supplements and kidney disease. There's also, and she also looks at the South Asian diet and how to keep the food you love as someone from the South Asian community, but eat it in a way that doesn't affect your kidneys in the long run. There's a lady called Megan. She was on PD dialysis. She's post-transplant now. She shared her journey on dialysis and now her journey post-transplant. There's a guy called Kai. He has lupus, and he shared his journey. So he actually is one of the guys who ended up being diagnosed later in life.
Right.
And when this goes out, I'll share his page.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
But he went through doing everything a normal person does. Gym, work, studies, mates, to then just all of a sudden being in the hospital, doctors not having a clue, doing multiple tests, and then now living with this new disease.
Right.
There's so many other people as well, that just there's a there's loads of other people. I know there's loads more. It's just trying to remember it off the top of my head. But
are they predominantly on like Instagram,
or... TikTok, there's loads of information now on kidney disease. Initially, I started my TikTok when I was a career coach. Right. This was after teaching. But then being in hospital during COVID with infections, alhamdulillah, nothing to do with COVID. I thought I needed something to find more purpose in my life. The career coaching was good because I was good at it and I was helping people. But being isolated in a hospital room because I had the infection, rather than being in a bay, I was in a room, and I was thinking there must be more I can do because I'm just counting ceiling tiles here. And then it was like the nurses kept coming in when they do the treatment, put your line on and give you medication. They kept saying there's young patients who still don't have the support even though there's loads of services. And that clicked in my head and I was like, I've got 30 years of this, so there must be something I can do. So I cleared all the career stuff off my TikTok. At least it's still on my Facebook and everything. And I just went straight into sharing my journey. And I did think about it quite a bit because I've gone through school, not told anyone unless they needed to know. I've gone through college. In college I used to get my work done, submit it, knowing I'm going to end up in hospital so I don't fall back. And still, the tutors only found out when I ended up in hospital. So I just, if they didn't, it was a need to know basis. If you didn't need to know, you can't tell. University, unless it was a case of I was in hospital and I was really ill, I even refused to take out mitigating circumstances for my coursework. Just because for myself I had to prove I can find ways around living with this and doing what I need to do. And all of that sort of stuff, I sort of looked back, I sort of thought about it, the good, the bad. If I share my journey on kidney disease on social media now after 30 years, I can't go back because once it's online, it's online. The consequences, the positives, and I thought, look, at the end of the day, whatever happens, I'm going to be helping someone. So I thought I have to, whatever happens, I have to sort of share this journey. And I've seen a lot of beautiful things come out of this journey. I'll give you a story, right?
Just before you start your story, just for anyone who wants to follow your social media, because I'm conscious people might be listening to this and they're saying, I want to follow this guy. So what's your handles?
On everything, it's Shuaib Ali Coach. So it's SHUAIB, Ali, ALI, and Coach is COACH. So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, if you're a professional with kidney disease. What else am I on? I think that's everything. Twitter. But my Twitter is mainly Formula One with a bit of kidney disease. So that's where they can find me. On my social media, I share a lot of the work of the guys I've already mentioned anyway. So if it doesn't matter if you're from a South Asian background or any type of background, I'm always sharing stuff from patients who are British and white British in their experience, patients who are from a black background, Asian background. So I'm sharing all sorts of things because it matters. There's, from the BAME background, transplants take a lot longer. And it comes down to matching, it comes down to donating, it comes down to blood type, and there's all these different things which...
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
Your number one radio station. Inspire FM. www.inspirefm.org.
Do you have a legal problem? Are you trying to settle a family member? If so, then contact M&K Solicitors. M&K Solicitors are a leading local firm specialising in immigration, family, personal injury, clinical negligence, civil and property law. Our solicitors have over 20 years' experience and are recognised internationally. Our success rate speaks for itself. Take advantage of our free consultations for your first meeting. We also give free advice on Fridays, no appointment needed. That's right, free legal advice. M&K Solicitors. Call 01582 732 503.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته وبسم الله قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم دع ما يريبك إلى ما لا يريبك, that leave that which puts you in doubt for that which does not put you in doubt.
How many times have you needed urgent medical supplies but don't know where to go? At Harris Pharmacy, we take pride in delivering a high-level healthcare to our community. This is why we have services such as private one-to-one consultation, free prescription ordering from GP and delivery to your home, mobility aids such as providing wheelchairs and many other items for everyday use. Call us today on free phone 0800 458 2850 to discuss your medical needs. We are open from 9 a.m. till 7 p.m. Monday to Friday and 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. on Saturdays. Harris Pharmacy, 165 A/B, Dunstable Road, Luton.
ग्रेस्टोन सॉलिसिटर्स जो कानूनी मामला को सुलझाने, आपका हक दिलवाने, आपको हर तरह का तहफ्फुज़ फराहम करने और बेहतरीन नताइज हासिल करने में मुखलसाना हर मुमकिन कोशिश करते हैं। मसला कोई भी हो, इमिग्रेशन, एम्प्लॉयमेंट, फैमिली लॉ, पर्सनल इंजरी, मेडिकल नेग्लिजेंस, सिविल लिटिगेशन एंड हाउसिंग, इमिग्रेशन मसाइल को सुलझाने के लिए ग्रेस्टोन सॉलिसिटर्स पेश कर रहे हैं फ्री इमिग्रेशन ड्रॉप इन क्लिनिक्स हर जुमे। टेलीफोन 01582 343 453, एड्रेस 275 Dunstable Road, Luton, LU4 8BS। कानूनी मसाइल में इंसाफ के लिए आपके हम सफर।
The Prophet ﷺ said, Allah will call a servant from my nation in front of all the creation on the day of judgment, and he will open for him 99 registers, and every register is as far as the human eye can see. And then will say, do you deny anything from this? Did my preserving angels who recorded the deeds of people wrong you?
Losing a loved one, especially a mother or a father, could mean losing access to safety, education and shelter. We here at Crisis Aid believe that children in the world deserve a better chance at life. Your small donation can influence a big change. Donate today. www.crisisaid.org.uk/orphan fund or call our donations line 0333 305 5000.
Oh, Hillary, I was going to use newspaper display advertising. But it costs £10 per inch.
And that's too expensive.
Oh, indeed it is. I want to sell a 10-foot ladder.
Oh, Roger, invest in an ear-catching advertising campaign on this radio station instead. It's a great way to tell people about your products and service.
For details, click on inspirefm.org, then advertise. From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 6:30. Please do not message or call, as the following programme is a rerun of a previous live show. Any announcements made during the repeat may now not be applicable.
Any health advice given, whether general, diet, physical or spiritual, is general only and must be verified by your doctor. If you need medical advice, please consult a doctor.
Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to the Health and Fitness Show. I'm your host, Suliman, and I'm delighted to say today I'm joined by brother Shuaib Ali, who's been talking to us in the first half of today's show about prune belly and kidney disease. To have Shuaib from Luton tell his real life story has really brought this topic to life. So I'm delighted to say he's stuck with us for the second half of today's show. So in the first half of the show, we were talking much about what these conditions are, and then we've moved on to talk more specifically about Shuaib's specific journey. So Shuaib, you mentioned there, mashallah, you said your first transplant was from your mum. So that must have been quite an emotional thing for her as well.
Yeah. All my life, from birth to now, my parents I would say are more resilient than I am, because they've had to go through just as much of the medical side of things as I had to. They've been trained on giving me injections. They've been trained on my dialysis machine, setting it up from scratch, loading the bags every night, all that sort of stuff. They've done a lot of what I've gone through with me. And then it came to donating the kidney, and Mum was like, yeah, there's no question about it. Donated the kidney, and a lot of people say I'm strong. My mum is so strong. My mum was at another hospital in London. I think it was Guy's.
Okay.
So they took the kidney out of my mum at Guy's and then transported it over to Great Ormond Street where I was. And so Mum got stitched up. I got stitched up. I was recovering. And in a matter of few days, I'm in bed and my mum just walked through the door. And I was like, what are you doing here? They told me they'll keep you in. And Mum was like, I feel fine. I self-discharged and I just want to come and look after you. And it's just like mums will do anything for their children. And my mum, alhamdulillah, there's nothing I can do at all. Even if I follow everything to the book for the rest of my life, there's nothing I can do to repay my mum. Not even just for the transplant, just for everything. The appointments, the care plans which school put in place, mum and dad doing all that sort of stuff. Dad taking me to my appointments, having to leave work early in the morning just so he could leave to take me to my appointment, or taking me to my appointment and then working late. It's all these different things which you don't really think about unless you've gone through it. Or even the late nights at the hospital, going into A&E, not knowing when I'm going to get a bed, but mum and dad's still there till I get admitted. All these different things. And it's also, alhamdulillah, why I'm grateful I was blessed with the ability to do all the treatment I needed to do and say to mum and dad, I'll manage it. And of course, if I need help, I'm going to come to you. And it's just taking that from them and me doing it myself. And I think it came from there. So watching my mum and dad do everything, I was like, I should be able to do this. And I was like, their ability to get through it whilst watching them go to work, whilst watching them raise 3, 4, 5 other children. It's so I was like, yeah, this has got to be a walk in the park, because I see them do it every day. And alhamdulillah, there's been difficult journeys, but it has been a walk in the park. Like my life, I'll tell you a story, and I'll tell you how blessed I am that everything in my life has been a walk in the park. I've had kidney disease, I've had the transplants, I've had the dialysis, I've had the surgeries. They're tough, but I've got the best family in the world. Like I've said before, if I could create my own, or give my parents traits or abilities, knowing everything I know now, I couldn't pick better traits or abilities or anything, right? And even with them getting me through school and everything, even when sometimes I didn't agree with them saying no to me on certain things, even with all that, I couldn't create better parents, which is why Allah is the greatest, right? And I've got amazing siblings, never treated me different. Still happy to beat me up if it came to it, but still will stop work just to take me to the hospital, or will take a day off if I'm ill. My younger brother would help me, just sometimes he'd help me get changed if I needed to. My sister's making me food if I'm not able to get up, all that sort of stuff. I've got good friends. Like, I've got friends who will, if I'm in a private room in hospital, one of my friends, he's a mental health nurse. He had the NHS. This is COVID. No one's allowed in. He's got an NHS uniform. And because I'm in a side room, he's not exposed to anyone. So he'd just come in and we could just chill for hours. I've already said the amount of times I've said parents, uncles, aunties, cousins. Every job interview I've been called to, I've always been given the job.
Wow.
Since my first job in retail to my last job teaching. There's all these other facets of my life which are so easy, and I believe it's because I'm so grateful and I don't complain about the kidney disease. Because it's easy to say, I can't do it, and look for all these excuses, which is completely fine because it's so hard to deal with. Whereas with me, from day one, I've been like, look, if this is what Allah's given me, I'm gonna fight it out until it goes or I go. One of the, what so university, the third year of university, my final year of university, I started feeling the effects of the kidney going. So a 20-minute walk from Bedford train station to the campus ended up being 45 to an hour. Just one of the biggest signs is spots appearing over your body with blood or pus and type, and that's because your blood is dirty and the kidney can't filter it. So if you're getting a lot of spots full of blood and pus and all these sort of things, it's because more than likely I would suggest get a blood test, because it might be your kidneys are struggling to keep the blood clean. Or rather than keep the blood clean, is remove the impurities from your body. So I started noticing all these pain in my leg, my feet swelling, difficulty breathing. So another sign for me is when my breathing goes, I know I'm in trouble, because I don't have a breathing condition, alhamdulillah. So if that happens, I know it's something to do with the kidneys. So all these things started happening, and even then I was still like, it's from Allah. I'm going to complete uni. Whatever happens, happens. Then partway through, this was actually, I had 2 or 3 assignments left of uni, and this all started happening. So I was so close to graduating as well. And then the discussion started of, you need a fistula, because we've already got you on the list, but you're at a point now where your body is struggling, so we need to put you on dialysis. And I was like, cool. I wanted to do PD dialysis, which is peritoneal dialysis, which is a tube they put in to your lower abdomen, and it's where the perineum cells are. And it's basically, you connect yourself at night. It's water. It takes in water and blood, cleans it all out, puts it back in. But you do it overnight, and then you live your life during the day. I wanted that. And I was like, I've done that before. I can manage that. Yes, it can be difficult. There's pain, cramps. You can get bloated from the amount of water that you take on. There's going to be fluid restrictions. I think the biggest fluid restriction I've ever had is I was only allowed to have 1 liter a day. That included with the gravy from the curries and everything. So that was everything, including ice pops and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that because I know it. Just so happened my case, my perineum cells had died, so they couldn't do it. Peritoneal cells had died, and they were like, we have to do HD, which is hemodialysis. And the way they do that is there's different options. There's a groin line if you need one as an emergency, and I've been told that a groin line is very painful to put in, as you can imagine, and they would start the dialysis like that if it's an emergency. There's also a chest line which goes in through your chest, and then you connect up. That takes out the blood, cleans it, puts it back in. Or there's a fistula, and that's what I have. Hospitals and doctors, nurses will push for a fistula because it is the most suitable thing, i.e. in the long run, there's less chance of it affecting you. But the easiest is a chest line. It can get blocked, it can cause difficulties, but it's so much, you don't have to needle yourself. The needles, the guys listening won't be able to hear, but they're about this big. And then you've got to put it in your arm, and there's 2 of them that you put in, tape up, and then connect yourself to dialysis. So as you can imagine, if you've got a chest line, you're loving it because you don't have to put needles in your arm. So they put a fistula in, and which is a device that they tie up through your veins, I think. And so it just basically becomes one, and it takes out your blood and cleans it, puts it back in. I got that, and I was like, because I'd never had it before, and everyone I'd met, they were like, oh, your arm bulges up, you're going to get blood spots, you can't lift anything in that arm, it's going to be painful. And I was like, this is going to be dreadful. But I was like, look, it's part of my life. I've never complained about anything before. Let's go with it. And in my case, even when it gets difficult, I won't make dua that Allah takes it away from me, because I believe this could be the thing where Allah says, you were patient through this, and through my mercy, you can enter Jannah.
Inshallah.
Right? And which is why, inshallah, which is why I say, whenever anyone makes dua for me, and whenever anyone prays for me, don't ask Allah to remove it, because it could be my thing that is like, so I was like, with everything else, I've got to be patient. And so the line's in, I've got a massive wool type sleeve over it to keep it warm, because when they form it and it gets cold, just like your joints, it can be very painful. You go to scans and they wait for it to form with your veins and become one. And I'd had my scan, and they scanned it and they said, right, it's ready, you can start, and we'll book you in. It might have been a Thursday evening, and they were like, we'll try and get you all booked onto the system to start on a Monday. Start on a Monday, or whenever we can get you on the earliest possible dialysis, because you're getting cramps and pain and all these sort of things now. And it just so happened, I was like, cool. I went home. In my head, obviously, as is natural, I'm now worried about the dialysis, but in my head, I'm still like, I'm going to do it because it's something that Allah's given me. I'm not going to complain about it, get it done. I didn't message my friends and say, it's going to be difficult, I don't know what to do. I didn't complain about it to my parents. I just thought, it's going to happen, let's do it. Didn't say or make dua to say, Allah remove it from me. All I said was, it's from Allah, so I've got to do it. I said that to myself. And then that night I went home, did some uni work just to take my mind off the dialysis, which if you've gone to uni, you know, you do everything but your work. So I did some work. 12:45, 1 o'clock, I put my laptop down and I said, I'm going to bed. In the morning, 12:45, 1 a.m. in the morning. Went to sleep. Right, so I'm like, cool. I get woken up at 3, 4 a.m. I get woken up by my mum or my dad to say that the police are calling. And they were like, they want to speak to you, but they've called our phone. So I was like, okay, bit odd. I've never interacted with the police before. So, and all I hear is, they must have given some background to my parents, because mum and dad are saying, don't put the phone down. And when it's, because I just woken up, everything was just all over the place. All I did was just put the phone down. I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I just gave the phone back to my dad, and he was like, I was like, all right, cool. So we just waited until they called back. So they did call back, and they were like, the hospital's been trying to call you since 1 o'clock because they found a kidney. Right. And this was the night that I went home after the line had been matured for the dialysis. And my phone, I just puked up. The first thing I did after I put the phone down was puke up. And I was just like, cool. Showered, got my stuff together, got to hospital about 5 a.m. And even at 5 a.m., they were like, just sit in the waiting room. Got in at 5 a.m. If I'm getting my timings right, because it's been 7 years now. Was in a waiting room from 5 a.m. till about 3, 4 p.m. Until they got the bed, and they wanted to make sure that the kidney was out and on the way before they put me under and all that sort of stuff. In all of that time, I hadn't checked for a phone call, hadn't checked emails. All I did was email my uni tutors saying, this is what's happening. I don't know what to do right now, but I'm going in hospital. So whenever I can check my emails, I'll let you know. Uni, thankfully, I've got or had amazing tutors, and they were like, once I checked my emails a few days later, they were like, look, email us back when you can, because you've only got 2 or 3 assignments and your dissertation, and then you're graduating. So they were like, defer your entry, which means take the time out you need and then come back and complete the course from where you are, rather than redoing the whole course. So they were like, that's what you can do, and that's what we advise you do. And so I deferred my entry, didn't even think about uni after that. I was like, cool. Transplant went in the evening. I'm going to say 6, 7, 8 p.m. around there. Around there somewhere. Didn't get out until the morning. There was, so in my case, there was a few complications. One is they needed a urologist at my surgery. A urologist surgeon, but weren't able to get hold of one either at all or partway through the surgery. I still can't remember properly. Because I just went in at a weird time. and obviously you don't keep a kidney or an organ out of the body for too long because it's an issue. So they were like, look, we're going to take you in. We can do what we can. So I've got a mitrophanol, which is another amazing thing. So through the prune belly syndrome, you get a lot of reflux from the bladder into the bowel, so a reflux of urine. So when I was young, they did surgery to take part of my bowel in with part of my bladder, create a bigger bladder, but also create a protection layer so that my urine had somewhere to go without refluxing. And the way to empty it is a surgery where they create a mitrophanol. A mitrophanol is essentially a passageway to get into your bladder to empty it. And the name came from the surgeon who first invented it. I believe, well, his surname was Mitrophanov. I think his first name was Paul. I believe so. And in most cases, it's through the stomach or the abdomen where the belly button is, and you put a catheter in there and it sits directly into your bladder. In my case, because of the issue with the abdomen, no stomach structure, they went on my right, just above the right pelvis. And so they went through, made a channel, flipped over my appendix, drove through the appendix into the bladder, and they made a whole channel that way. So when I put the catheter in, it goes in through the appendix into my bladder, but it just feels like one seamless thing. It hurts when it's first formed, and they stitch it and keep it in place, and they keep it in place until the channel is formed and there's no issue of it closing up or anything. The best way I can explain it is like a piercing. If you don't use it, it closes up. That's the best way I can explain it. So they stitch it in, keep it there just until it feels normal, and the body gets used to it. And then you can just put a catheter in, depending on your bladder size and specific needs to you. You can empty it a number of times a day. I empty it 3 to 4, depending on how full it gets. Then I also have to flush it with normal saline once a week because it's still connected to the bowel, and you don't want stuff from the bowel getting into the bladder. So it all sounds complicated to everyone, but to me, I say it as if just second nature. So yeah, I've got that. The catheter goes in, I empty it, and at night I just keep a bag on which empties the bladder, and it just that is so easy to me. And I've had it since I was 8-9 years old. It's a thing that I'm gonna have for life. But it's not a thing which ever gets in the way of anything I do. So even in school, I used to play football with the bag on when it was still getting used to the body.
So you're not scared?
No, I mean, like even at that young age, I was like, look, it's from Allah. So whether it goes well or it doesn't, I'll accept it because it's from Allah, right? And from young till now, I've kept that same mentality. So that's how I empty my bladder. But back to the kidney. Got the call into hospital, went in. The mitrophanol came in because they couldn't put the kidney in its usual place. Just because I had the transplant already put in on the left side. The right side is where the mitrophanol was, and that was the challenging bit. Because they can't surgically go through that, because otherwise there's nowhere else for me to empty the bladder. But they also have to tie the kidney onto that. So part of the kidney is connected to the bladder, and also part of the kidney is connected to a ureter, which empties the bladder. So they had to connect that up, and they needed a urologist surgeon, and they were like, look, we're going to go ahead with it if you're okay with it, and we'll do our best to find a urologist, and whilst you're on the table, we'll do everything we can to make sure before we wake you up, everything's as per they do it usually, even with the challenges. Went in around 8, didn't come out till early morning. A regular transplant, 7-8 hours anyway. Yeah, so I must have woke up just before they started doing breakfast. So it was quite long. And then if I can remember correctly, my consultant came to me, and he was like, congratulations. I was still out of it. You get given, it depends on the type of painkiller. Some it's morphine, other hospitals use something different. It can be fentanyl, and all you do is you push a button and it gives you a painkiller. Unfortunate thing is, once it's finished, they don't give you another one.
Right.
So you've got to play it right.
Yeah.
For the first few hours, I didn't know that, and they're like, your painkillers are running out. So I was like, all right, cool, I've got to play this nice now.
Sure.
And I was still going in and out of consciousness because of the painkiller.
Right.
And then I checked my phone for the first. I checked who called me for the first time since I got the call from the police.
Right.
And you know when you get a voicemail, you got that red circle. That whole time I'd never noticed it, even though it's staring me in the face. I've just didn't notice it. So I checked the voicemail, and I thought it might be one of my mates. It could be anyone. Let's hear it. And it was the doctors who were trying to get in touch with me, saying, "Look, we found the perfect kidney. If we can't get you in, or if we can't get in contact with you, we will aim to find a better kidney for you soon." And even whilst I was in and out of consciousness, I was like, whoa. I was like, subhanallah. Like, every nurse I've spoken to so far has said they've never known the hospital to call the police to get someone out.
Really?
Yeah. So all these things, I've missed a phone call. The police have called me, which the nurses have said never happened. It's a day after they've told me I'm going to start dialysis. Also a day after they told me it could be another year to 2 before I get a kidney. And in part or in full, it's me relying on Allah. But also at that time, which I was doing on and off before, is every Jummah I read Surah Qaf. And I made it my habit. And those two things, I believe, is what rushed everything. Because the doctors was like, your blood type rare. Already, you've got the issues with the bladder. And also, they have to make sure it's viable and doesn't affect your bladder. Then you've got because I'd become weak at the time and pain, they were like, we can get you through the surgery, but then you'd have to, your recovery, what does it look like? All these things they had to balance up. And everything just so happened that it just went through. They found the kidney, they got me in, and in some cases, or quite a few cases, it can take days or weeks for the kidney to wake up. Wake up means the body to recognize it and it start doing its job. In those moments, you still need dialysis just to give the kidney a little kick and say, go and do your job. In my case, I didn't even need dialysis. So I've got the fistula, never been used in 7 years. And it's like, it all comes from, I believe wholeheartedly, that whatever Allah gives to me in terms of my kidney and my condition, I was like, cool, if it's from Allah, I'm going to deal with it. Which is why, even though people with the best intentions say, or they say that they'll pray that Allah takes it away from me, I'm like, don't ever do that, because that could be my ticket to Jannah. Inshallah. And it's like, even all these other things, like the PIC line, being able to stay out of hospital and do these things myself, all these things might seem like a lot to someone or someone else. But for me, knowing that hospitals are not a nice place to be, knowing that I'd rather be at home, knowing it takes me quicker to mix the medication and give it to myself because I'm not managing 7-8 other patients, which is a massive issue because of the NHS. Last time I was in, can you believe it? It was a full ward of 4, 8, 12, 16, 17, 18, 22 patients and only 3 nurses.
Wow, just subhanallah. Shuaib, honestly, mashallah, I've presented this show for about 7 odd years now, but subhanallah, you've been the most inspirational guest that I've ever had the pleasure of interviewing.
A lot of people say that, and I use it to where I can help others. But I've personally, because it's normal for me, I've never seen it as inspirational. People will always say it, and they say it with good intentions that we could never do it. It's tough, but for me, I'm like, mashallah, I don't know anything different.
May Allah preserve you, bro. May Allah, as you said, make it a route for you to enter Jannah with your parents and your siblings, inshallah.
Ameen.
And as I say, Jazakallah khair for giving up your time. Unfortunately, we've completely run out of time. So listeners, thank you for staying with us throughout today's show. Inshallah, we'll be back next week with another episode of the Health is Fitness Show. Until then, assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. In Luton and its surrounding areas, it is now time for Salat